This story is set in a community called Umuaro. Umuaro is not a village. It is a union of 6 villages that came together a long time ago when they were facing a serious threat from a powerful enemy. Before that, they were separate clans with separate identities. When they decided to unite, they needed a shared god to represent their new bond. That god is called Ulu. Ulu was created specifically for Umuaro, and he sits above all the other old gods of the individual villages. He is the god of the whole community. And the man who speaks for Ulu, the Chief Priest of Ulu, is the most powerful religious figure in all of Umuaro. That man is Ezeulu. Ezeulu is not your typical humble servant of God. This guy has an ego. He is highly intelligent, deeply principled, and he knows exactly how sharp his mind is. He has very little patience for people he considers fools, which from his perspective is quite a large number of people. As Chief Priest, Ezeulu has a specific and powerful role in the life of Umuaro. Every month, he eats one of 13 sacred yams as part of his priestly duties. These yams mark the passage of time in the religious calendar. When all 13 yams have been eaten, it is time for the Feast of the New Yam, and the Feast of the New Yam is what opens the harvest season. Before Ezeulu calls the feast, not a single person in Umuaro can harvest their new yams. The crops can be ripe and ready, and it does not matter. You wait for Ezeulu. That is the kind of power this man holds over the daily lives of the people. Ezeulu has a compound full of wives and children, but a few of them are central to this story. His oldest son is Odogo, who is a wood carver. Then there is Obika. Obika resembles Ezeulu in appearance. He's the one most similar to Ezeulu when you're talking about appearance, and you can say, yo, this guy is exactly his son. Obika is the kind of man who is everything at once. He is strong, energetic, well-liked, and genuinely talented. But he has 2 serious problems. One is he loves drinking a lot. The second is that when he drinks, which is often, his temper becomes a very unreliable and dangerous thing. He gets into fights. He says things he should not say. He makes enemies he does not need to make. There's another specific incident that happens also in the story. Obika and one of his friends have been selected to clear land for a road that's being built by the white people. The night before he's supposed to go to work, him and his friend go drinking. So they get drunk, and the next day they wake up late and show up to work late. Now when they arrive to work late, the guy who's in charge, who's called Wright, he's a typical British colonial master. So what happens is this guy they get into an argument with Obika, and Obika charges the guy. And then what happens, Obika is whipped. Grown man is whipped. When Ezeulu hears about this, he is deeply shamed and deeply angry. He does not go easy on Obika, which is also a problem that Ezeulu usually always sees Obika at fault. One of his best friends tells Ezeulu, hey, you have to wait until you hear Obika's side of the story. But in his mind, he's like, it's because of that palm wine that he always likes to drink. That's what's bringing him down. Another son of Ezeulu is Oduche. Ezeulu has done something that surprises everyone in the village, especially considering he's the chief priest. He sends his son Oduche to a mission school. Now, this is not because Ezeulu has found Jesus. Far from it. This is a strategy. Ezeulu is trying to think ahead, because as he's looking around, he sees the white people have taken over all these other places. And basically, Umuaro is probably the last village when it comes to the Igbo people that has not been overtaken by the colonial masters and their culture and their religion. What Ezeulu is trying to do here is trying to get one of his sons in there so they can learn the ways of these people, learn their culture, and sort of have an idea what is this enemy that we're dealing with. So Oduche joins the mission. He's being taught the new religion. Now, one problem with that is Oduche starts changing. When he goes there, he starts learning these new things. He starts believing. In the Igbo culture, in one of the sacred animals is a python, according to one of their villages. And it's very cherished, and you find that in a lot of communities. Now, one of the villages of Umuaro has this royal python that they have. So this guy Oduche captures a royal python and puts it inside a box. Initially, what he's trying to do is he's trying to kill the python. But once he grabs the python, he thinks it's like, I think he also becomes a bit scared because it's like, can I really do this? There's still the whole idea of this is a religious item. This is something that we hold sacred. Instead of killing it, he puts it in a box. Now one day as people are chilling in the compound and Oduche is actually outside, he's not home at that time, they start hearing a commotion in his house. and the box is sort of moving. They basically try to wonder what it is. Ezeulu, after that commotion, comes and says, you know what's going on? He goes, opens the box, and a python comes out. This is a huge scandal. The son of the Chief Priest of Ulu had locked a sacred python in a box. Now, one of the most important people in Ezeulu's life is his best friend, Akuebue. Akuebue is one of those rare people who can actually talk to Ezeulu honestly. And it seems like Ezeulu sort of listens to him sometimes. Most people around Ezeulu either fear him or flatter him, or both. But Akuebue does neither. He's straight shooting and he sort of uses his logic. So this guy speaks plainly, he listens carefully, and he pushes back when he thinks Ezeulu is going too far. He cares about his friend and usually is like the voice of reason in a lot of things. And Ezeulu also trusts him. This story usually shifts from, people in Umuaro and also the white administrators, specifically one called Mr. Winterbottom. Now, Mr. Winterbottom had an incident 5 years earlier where there was a land dispute between the people of Akuebue and Umuaro. And what happened is Ezeulu came and testified and said that that land actually belonged to Akuebue and not Umuaro, which was basically him testifying against his own people. And people went to war for that, but the colonial government came in and shut that down quickly. They sort of confiscated guns from the Umuaro people. But Winterbottom was pretty impressed by Ezeulu and his ability to be honest, even though it's basically going against his own people. And he keeps on remembering that. Now, during all this time, the colonial government is trying to figure out how do we rule these people indirectly. One main issue they have is like anytime they usually put somebody in charge, they're like these educated guys, they educate the locals, and when they go there, they become very tyrannical and basically extort their own people. They're very cruel to their own people. And it's something that baffles, especially somebody like Winterbottom. So in his mind, he's thinking, I remember there's one old guy I met 5 years ago and he was pretty honest, and that is Ezeulu. So he tells his guys, hey, can you go and summon this guy and tell him that I need to see him? These guys, the administration, they go and try to talk to Ezeulu. Now when the messengers go, Ezeulu says if Winterbottom wants to come and talk to him, he has to come and not send all these guys. He's not going to go anywhere. So Winterbottom gets this message and is extremely furious with Ezeulu. Now he orders for Ezeulu to be arrested. So basically the guys go back to arrest him, but at that time Winterbottom becomes sick. When the messengers go to arrest Ezeulu, they don't find him at his house. Turns out that Ezeulu and Obika, his son, had gone to Akuebue. So basically they just decided to go and see Winterbottom. But when they get there, they find out that he's sick. So word spreads around like, hey, and actually it's Ezeulu who has made Winterbottom sick, and people start fearing Ezeulu. The Chief Priest of Ulu, this guy is bad news. So after being detained, he's told that Winterbottom wants him to be the overall king or chief of all the villages and everything. Unfortunately, Ezeulu says no. He's like, I just want to be the priest of Ulu and I just want to be like the chief of Umuaro. He doesn't care about all that power. So they decide that Ezeulu has to be detained for some time and figure out what to do. He is given a house and, he's not treated pretty badly, but he can't really go home. He stays there for 2 months, away from his compound, his wife, his children, and, his priestly duty. Remember the Feast of the Yams and everything like that. He cannot do any of his sacred oaths and anything. He cannot eat the yams. So that means the harvest will be late because he has not been able to do that. When he's in Akuebue, he starts thinking, negative things about his village because in a dream he sees like the villagers going against his grandfather, sort of like throwing stones at him and the like, and he also sees them doing the same to him. He becomes his grandfather. So he has this bitterness towards the village and he swears that he will actually make them pay. So when he returns to Umuaro, he becomes a changed man. The elders and community members come to welcome him back. There's a ceremony. People try to show that they are glad he is home, but something in Ezeulu does not warm to it. Because of the 2 months that he stayed in Akuebue, Ezeulu is 2 yams behind an account. He was not home to eat, and he cannot skip them according to custom. He becomes pretty stubborn about it, and basically people cannot harvest around because the priest has not announced the new yam. So people stay for like a month goes by, people are starting to go hungry. The community sends elders to Ezeulu to beg him to make an exception. They explain the situation, they point out that he was taken away by the British and that the delay was not anyone's fault, that Ulu would understand if the feast was called early, just this once. They are pretty desperate right now because basically imagine all your yams are in your farm and you can't really do anything about it. And now you have to go and buy from a neighbouring village. This guy listens, but he says no. He says Ulu is the one who set this calendar and he cannot change what God has ordained. Now even his best friend, Akuebue, he comes to him privately. He tells him like, hey, you really need to do something about this. The people are actually suffering. Because even in his own household, this is the thing. It's not like he's hoarding, even like saying like his household is going to be wealthy and whatever. Even his own household is actually suffering also. They don't have enough yams and everything. Ezeulu is pretty hard-headed when it comes to this. Now this creates an opening for the missionaries. The Christian missionaries have been working in Umuaro for some time, trying to make some inroads. They have been gaining converts slowly, building their church and establishing themselves. They have been fighting an uphill battle though, because the community is deep-rooted in its traditions and has not been partially interested in the foreign religion. But now they see an opening. They send word through the community that anyone who brings their harvest to the church will be protected by the Christian God. You do not need Ezeulu's permission. You do not need to wait for the feast. You just come and you bring your first harvest and you can go and harvest the rest. And people start going there. As all of this is going on, Obika, Ezeulu's son, has been chosen to play an important role in a funeral ceremony. He is to be a night runner, a ritual role that involves running through the town in the darkness to honor the dead. It is physically demanding and spiritually significant duty. The problem is that Obika has been ill. He is not well enough to run. But Obika is sort of headstrong and whenever he wants to do something, he will do it. So this guy shows up and runs pretty much a long distance at night because it's part of a ceremony. Now towards the end of the race when he gets back, Obika collapses and dies. Now for Ezeulu, this is something that he just cannot absorb. His mind does not survive this. He goes mad, not violently or like dramatically, but quietly he starts withdrawing himself and he withdraws interest into anything else around his life. So basically, Ezeulu, the Chief Priest of Ulu, is simply not there. What remains is a shell sitting in the compound of a chief priest. The harvest never gets called. The Feast of the New Yam is never announced. The people of Umuaro harvest under the church. Now every time there's a new harvest, it is done under the name of the sun. That is Arrow of God by Chinua Achebe.